So we talked a little bit about toxic friends. And I know for me, I have some friends that are challenging. And I don't know that I would go so far as to say toxic. There are some in the past that have been toxic, but there are some that um they don't respond to text messages very well, or for months sometimes, and we don't really have a lot in common. Or I try to schedule dinner and they're like, well, it's cold outside. And I'm like, you live in Boston and it's January. Of course it's gonna be cold.
This is what we do. Yeah.
Right?
I live in Toronto, Canada, so I understand. It's the same situation.
Exactly. Trying, as INFJs, we're definitely people pleasers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're always changing what we do and what we say for the people around us. So when we run into these types of friends, I know for me, I always think, okay, well, I've invested so much time and so much energy in them, and I don't want to be rude to them. And I don't have a lot of friends, but at the same time, it really bothers me that they're not treating me very well. So how do you deal with that situation?
Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of people experience. I think particularly once you're like done college, let's say, and you're in the workplace, and perhaps you have one or two friends in the workplace, but outside of that, most people are super lonely in terms of like, where do I make friends as an adult? What are like, do I just ask a friend for their number when I see them at the bar? Like, how does that work, right? And I think that's a whole other aspect, of course, as an INFJ too. But that's kind of like one of the building blocks that I was talking about before, because when we work on ourselves, then it also empowers us to say, hey, it really makes me feel such and such when you don't respond. And that is a boundary. That is a boundary that, hey, I am requesting that. What you're really saying with that is, I'm requesting that you respond to my text messages if you still like to maintain a friendship with me. But we don't feel empowered to set those boundaries, because when we're lacking self-love, then we're in this other place where like, well, no one else is going to want to be my friend either then. Versus, I already feel valued, worthy, loved, and I know that I can give this to someone else too in a friendship. That's a different empowered decision to make out of a place of feeling loved versus a place of feeling lack. So I'm lacking love within myself. Now it's also appearing and showing up in some of these relationships too. And I don't feel like justified enough to either cut that friendship off or really set those boundaries. I think a lot of times, like right now, people talk so much about cut toxic people out of your life, whatever. You're gonna be with nobody at the end of it, right? Because like, we're all toxic. I'm sure I've been toxic to people too. Yeah, maybe toxic is a strong word. It really makes me feel like Britney Spears vibes right now. I'm gonna calm down. But we've all done things and we've been rude to people, and we know that. And so it's more about, okay, this is what I'm willing to accept, and having some of those hard conversations, which are uncomfortable, but at the same time would also encourage you, as you're working on yourself and feeling better about yourself, to also start like attending events or doing like a meetup or something where you're also meeting new people, because then it'll, like, your ego won't get attached to, well, we only have, we can count our friends in one hand. And so if we lose this one and we lose that one, then we're really going to have nobody. Well, instead you were like, okay, well, I'm also interested, as you're becoming interested in other things too, right? Because we also change. Well, perhaps I can meet some people who are also an INFJ, or they're interested in working on themselves and their own journey. And that's the other beautiful thing, that I feel like in a big city like Boston or Toronto, like, there's plenty of events happening, there's plenty of meetups. Even in small towns, I feel like meetups are such a big thing.
Yeah, it's a whole different world now, especially with social media too. And I was one of the first ones to discount my social media friends, because it's like, well, they're on the internet.
They're not real.
They're not real friends. Which is like, it's ridiculous, because they're people too. And maybe you may never meet them in person. I have a couple of really good friends in Australia, and I have no plans to go to Australia.
Yeah.
But, and you're in Canada, but we can and talk on video like it is just like we're in person.
Absolutely. And it's important. Those are just as valid. Thank you for saying that. It's not just the geographical aspect. It's not just a geographical aspect. But I do think that also makes a difference, like having both. So Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.